I'm Andy Pilgrim with Automobile Magazine. Welcome to a little different Pro Racers take. It's not normally what we do, is it? It's usually cars. This bike, Ducati Panigale V4S 2018, has connections to Lamborghini and Audi, parent companies. This bike is probably looked at now as being the most capable sports production motorcycle you can buy. At the moment, it's always arguable. And this is a 1979 Laverda Jota, or Jota, depending on where you come from. I think Jota means, or Jota means Spanish dance. This was, at the time, the fastest production motorcycle. It was the first production motorcycle to hit 140 miles an hour in testing. So 40 years apart, we're going to compare the two bikes. It's going to be interesting. Technological change over 40 years is massive. I would have to take an hour to go over most of it. I'm going to just quickly go through some bits. Tires are the most obvious, what's in contact with the ground. For instance, the Panigale rear tire is a 200 millimeter rear tire. The Jota has a 120 millimeter rear tire. In the fronts have not changed that much actually. The front tires are very similar in the sense of size-wise, but it's the rears because of horsepower that have really expanded. We also have to talk about chassis and suspension. Electronically controlled shocks on this, a single rear shock with a single-sided swing arm on the back. The old Laverda, dual shocks, one each side, and basically a rear swing arm that looks kind of like an oversized bicycle swing arm, to be honest, and it's dual-sided. That's just a massive change there. Upside down forks came in several years ago now, but on this one more the traditional telescopic fork for the Laverda. We have a quick shifter on this motorcycle. Essentially what that means is I can pin the throttle and just shift up. I don't have to use the clutch to upshift. I just pull my foot up on the gear shifter and it goes up, and then lift off the throttle and I can push down. You don't need any of that. It's kind of like a double clutch automatic gearbox in a car, but you're using it in manual mode. Very, very similar. Phenomenal actually. The engine in this motorcycle is a V4. It's a 90-degree V4, has 214 horsepower. With the optional Akrapovic exhaust, it's got about 227 horsepower. One of the reasons I wanted to get both these motorcycles in a video is exhaust notes. The V4 of the Ducati is new for the Ducati. They also has quite a flat sounding V4. Beautiful engine note, and obviously an amazing piece of kit. The Laverda, we know it was fast for its time, 90 horsepower, 3-cylinder engine. We've got a 180-degree crank. One piston at top dead center, and you've got the two outside pistons down at bottom dead center on the engine. It gives a very flat engine note, actually unique in the motorcycle world. Nothing sounds like these Laverda 3-cylinder 1000cc motors, nothing. Why am I holding this magazine? It's actually a 1977 copy of Bike Magazine. A Laverda Jota is on the front, and they tested it in here, and some of the numbers and some of the stats, I referred back to this magazine. It's one of the old magazines that I've collected over the years, and I still have it. So there's one thing about the Jota. Laverda produced a 1000cc SFC. That was their top-of-the-line motorcycle. Laverda wanted to do production racing and make a sort of a production racing special for Europe. That's where the Jota came from. There's different camshafts in this bike, little bits and pieces, shocks slightly different, but essentially they put a bit more horsepower into the bike, so it ended up at 90 horsepower, which it produces at 8,000 RPM. They never produced a torque number for it. The funny thing about it is, which is kind of cool, the SFC and the SF, they had a rev counter here. You'll notice these are the Nippon Denso, the ND there, Japanese clocks, very, very similar to a Honda CB750 of the time. And it's got a red line starting at 6,500. On the Jota, because they had a different camshaft, it actually revs to 8,000. So it goes right the way through the red line and all the way to 8, but it revs clean to 8,000 RPM, which was always something a little bit different. But the SFC, you pretty much lost power at 6,500. You can kind of think about these as sort of a GT3 RS, an RS version of the Laverda 1000 SFC. Just like cars have stability control now and traction control and all kinds of driver aids, driver assists, The Laverda has nothing. It has brakes. That's a driver assist, right? But the Panigale, unbelievable array of stuff on this thing. You've got traction control. You've got wheelie control. You've got ABS brakes. Lots of stuff that Laverda or any of the other bike manufacturers back then could only dream about. This thing has everything. You need it. If you didn't have wheelie control, there's absolutely no way that you'd just be trying to fight the wheelie all the way. You couldn't actually accelerate. And it basically controls the angle of the tire coming off the ground and the angle of wheelie control, and allows you to actually accelerate with the tire off the ground. It's a ridiculous feeling, to be honest. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable technology on bikes these days. So if you've got a motorcycle that essentially from a standstill in less than 15 seconds can reach 180 miles an hour, you'd better have some good brakes. Sport bikes, massive brakes on the front, very little on the rear. The rear brakes are more designed to be an afterthought somewhat, but also you can control the entry to the corner. You can actually control rear wheel slide on the way to a corner. So you look at the rear brakes, yeah, it's quite small, just one rear disc back there, but look at the fronts. Two 13-inch rotors. It does have ABS. The ABS works to control the lockup, and it also works to control rear wheel lift. Because if you hit the brakes hard on this bike, you can actually endo the bike, and you definitely need some help with the ABS for this bike to get the most out of it. So we come back to the Jota brakes. Looking at the rear brake on the Jota, it's actually bigger than the Panigale. So the rear brake can actually be utilized reasonably. But again, up front, you've got two 11-inch rotors on the front. Most of the braking is done on the front. I want to talk a little bit about power to weight ratios, because I think a lot of people who are watching this may be more car oriented. So it's interesting to go back 40 years. 40 years ago, Porsche Turbo was a rocket ship street car. Power to weight ratio on those cars was about 11 pounds per horsepower with a driver in there, fueled up, ready to go. This is a power to weight ratio of about 7.5 pounds per horsepower. So the acceleration rate of this was a lot quicker, certainly from the 60 to 120 mile an hour range, than the sports cars of its day. Now, what's that? 7.5 pounds per horsepower. That's very much equivalent to a Corvette Grand Sport. So that's the kind of acceleration you're looking at. But now we go over to the Ducati power to weight ratios. For car enthusiasts, McLaren 720S is a rocket ship essentially. Power to weight ratio on that car, 4.4 pounds per horsepower, 9.9 second quarter mile, rocket acceleration. This, 2.6 pounds per horsepower, 2.6. What's the equivalent? An Indy car, the 750 horsepower road course engine, not the 550 horsepower speedway engine. This accelerates as quick as an Indy car for, around about $25,000. That's pretty cool. So we're going to take both these bikes over to NCM Motorsports Park and put them on track to listen to the noise and have some fun. a little bit of a different comparo, 2 wheels, not 4. I really hope you've enjoyed it.